Hello. All right. So I'm just going to have a bit of trouble because I usually like to walk around, and this is kind of stopping me, but thank you for putting up with me. So thank you everyone for coming here today. This is going to be more of a journey of some things that I've learned throughout years of creating software. And so first things first, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Pedro. I studied here at the University of the Algarve, and I have a bachelor's in computer engineering, like many of you, and a postgrad in cybersecurity. And 4 years ago, I created a company, which is where I learned all of these things. And one of the first things I learned, and that I like to share a lot, is that we, as computer engineers, we build solutions. We don't build software. And why do I say this, and how did I learn this? Well, in college, starting in college, we actually started learning about business processes and optimizing business processes. So going to a company, seeing how they do things, and getting the flow, the workflow going better, and formalizing the processes they have, all of that. And looking at the history, this is also something that's new. It's a bit older than computer engineering and software, but it's not much older. So before that, before computers, people weren't really optimizing things. There wasn't a profession dedicated to just going to companies and getting things running smoothly. There was no one dedicated to that. People still did that, obviously, but there wasn't a dedicated profession. And the truth is, the world still spun before we existed, us problem solvers, just not as efficiently. And I'd like for you to ponder, if tomorrow computers cease to exist, would we still be useful? Does someone want to give their thoughts about that? I have a lot of agreeing from the back there. No one? Sergio?
Yeah.
How so? What would you do?
Maybe we'd be carpenters. Or civil engineers, I guess.
No, like, could you use what you know as a guy that solves problems using computers to
Maybe
help?
as a manager. Maybe to define to program my employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say anything that involves architecture. Like you could plan out farming patterns if you live in a medieval village and want to start on grading schedules versus rice and restaurants and grow. Yeah, exactly. Problem, so. Yeah.
There's problems everywhere, so it's more of a mentality, problem solving than a very specific issue. Normally we get to do a lot of engineering and everything, and we say that it's engineering, but most of the time we are solving problems that are rising or that rose before us, or they are rising at the moment. So anything that creates problems is a good way of thinking.
Basically, you just change the tool from code to whatever.
I'll go a little more philosophical. Every time we solve a problem, we create new ones.
So throughout those answers, you actually mentioned pretty much all I had to say. So I'd say yes, we can still solve problems, and we can still formalize solutions to problems into something, because that's what we do. We formalize a solution to a problem in software, in code, but there's no reason we wouldn't be able to formalize it into something else, into a written document saying this is the procedure you should follow. And so yeah, nothing would stop us from being useful, also as carpenters, and that really hit close to home. I like to do carpentry. But we could still be problem solvers in this kind of sad world, to be honest. So this profession was needed long before computers existed. Things like postal services, banking, finance, and the taxation, are sectors that, due to their scale, they need to perform efficiently. But now I have a question for all of you. When were postcodes invented? What do you guys think? You know postcodes, zip codes? Any guesses?
Never sent letters before.
Never sent letters. Okay. They're actually something pretty modern. Around the 1940s, they were invented in Ukraine, the Ukrainian Socialist Republic at the time, but they fell out of use. And in Portugal, they were only introduced in 1976. And it's something really nifty. So with a zip code, it's a reality that streets with the same name exist across different cities and sometimes even in the same city. So a zip code is useful. It gets things rolling easier. You don't have to figure out where a city is. You just see, okay, it starts with 8,000, so I just send it to the Algarve and they'll take it from there. It starts with 1,000, I'll send it to Lisbon and they'll take it from there. And that's something that has nothing to do with computers, but it didn't come up until we started having people actually solving problems. And so hopefully, everyone here can realize how everything you learned about optimizing algorithms and inverting binary trees could still help you if you were sent back in time 200 years, and you'd get those things rolling a bit easier. And you'd still be optimizing, but instead of optimizing an if clause, you would be optimizing a guy doing a really bad job. Okay? Just fire him. So yeah, manager. Good. So I've made the point in the past that a lot of modern information technology things we have now have come with computers and not because of computers. And in this sentence pretty much sums it up, that computers and the internet allow us to do the same things, but faster. Well, sure, some things would be unfeasible, they would be expensive, or they would take a lot of man hours and not be worth it without computers, but they wouldn't be impossible, and maybe we'd be able to still do them in a smaller scale. And that was proven a few months ago at Meatballs every Wednesday at 19 on IKEA. We did this little exercise where we pretty much did multi-threading with just rubber bands, an algorithm, and a dream. And we solved actually a pretty complex problem, using ourselves, no computers involved. And that was the power of an algorithm. And it just worked. It was cool. So, we now go to chapter 2 of this journey, where I realized that let's copy stuff. And this isn't a new concept. And for those of you familiar with AI, machine learning, meta heuristics, you'll see that it comes around all around. Like that, generic algorithms, neural networks. I think everyone here knows what that is, at least in concept. And ant colony optimization is a set of optimization algorithms that inspire themselves in the way ants work with pheromones and stuff to optimize things like pathfinding or resource gathering. And simulated annealing, it's something to do with the way that metal cools up and cools down and heats up. And these things just work. Like, we here are the proof that these concepts work, and it's a good idea to copy these things that work, because without genetics or neural networks in our brain, we wouldn't be here. Nothing of this would work. So nature has been around for billions of years, and it got us working solutions. And I'm 23. I think nature has had a bit of a head start on me. So maybe if nature has already solved or at least addressed the problem, I should listen to it. And there are countless examples of inventors looking to the skies and finding inspirations for their next designs, like this. This was how Velcro was invented. So this guy, a Swiss guy called Georges de Mestral, sorry if I said his name wrong, but I don't think he's here, so it doesn't matter. He was hunting in the Jura Mountains in Switzerland, and he noticed that these thingies, called cockleburs, were getting stuck all over his jacket and on his dog's fur. And he was like, I can turn this into a product. And so he invented Velcro, hook and loop, as they like to call it. We know it as Velcro around here. And we are good at creating problems, but we're even better at creating solutions. And the fact is, it's not just nature that we can look to as inspiration. We can look to our peers. We can engulf ourselves in new experiences and new fields, aside from the niche we work at. And we can look at the world through a different perspective. And maybe, just maybe, we'll find a new solution to our problems. Bringing us to chapter 3. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just slap it on something new. So I have a question for you guys. Who knows what this is? Can I see a show of hands? All right, so you guys are old. And who knows what this is? Really, I would expect more hands. Does anyone see the similarities? So pay attention. Channel list on the left, messages on the middle, chat box on the bottom, user list on the right. It's the exact same thing. And they were made decades apart. Because it works. If it works, let's not change it. But now, let's say the chat box, instead of being at the bottom, was at the top. I don't think you would be thinking, how quirky, how fun, the chat box is at the top. No, you'd be thinking, who the heck made this? Where do they work at? And who do I have to speak with to get them fired? Because it makes no sense. You're used to having the interface laid out like this, and it gives you comfort. And that gets us to the next point. You can give your users comfort, and one of the biggest assets to getting your users to like your interface is basing the interface and how the system works around the user's experiences. And so, to get to a bit of a story of how I found this section. 4 years ago, my company started developing a solution for a problem that we thought no one had solved yet. We needed a software to manage our inventory. But we thought that the stuff that already existed wasn't enough. And that was because the same way it's useless for you to know that you have a picture of your dog somewhere in your house and you just don't know where it is. With objects, it's the same thing. The other day, I went to a hardware store looking for something that supposedly had 70 in stock. And I got to the store and there weren't on the shelves and no one knew where it was. Because that's also an important thing about things. Like, it's not enough to have them, you have to know where they are. And we wanted to go a step further. And we wanted to know everything about each object. Because we don't care if we have 100 pictures at home. That might be useful for a business, knowing that they have 100 pens that they can sell. But I don't want 100 generic pictures. I want my 100 pictures. And if anyone replaced any one of them, I'd be heartbroken. Okay? So we set out to create a complete solution that would not only be able to tell us how much of something we have, but also where we have it, how it got there, how it was made, and who touched it at every process, at every part of the process. And for specific items, some specific characteristics, like for perishables, an expiration date is something cool to have on your system. For cables, for instance, the length of the cable is something useful to know. And so we spent months trying to tackle this problem, trying to find efficient ways to do this, compromising between being easy to use and giving us a complete solution like we wanted to. But what we didn't know is that someone had already solved this problem for us long before we were even born. And that was computers, or like the guys that make computers. I don't know all of them. And they already solved the problem of storing and retrieving information. Computers store data, and they store each bit, hopefully, without loss. So they have every single detail about every image. They don't store objects the same way we store stock. It's in the box on the shelf, and good luck finding it. And we had all of that past experience at our disposal for free, tons of algorithms regarding efficient storage, compression, everything that we just had to convert from one medium or from one kind of solution, which was storing information, converted to storing objects. And that, my friends, is the power of a metaphor. And we had just found ours. So in user interface design, an interface metaphor is a set of user interface visuals, actions, and procedures that exploit specific knowledge that the users already have about other domains or other apps. For instance, it's not really a metaphor because it's more of a copy, but the user that uses IRC could easily use Discord because they're very similar. And if you make an app that's really similar to Gmail, even if it doesn't do emails, it does something that's a bit like it, then users will have an easy time using your app because they already know how to use a Gmail. But we saw no reason to limit ourselves to using a metaphor on the interface. We could use our metaphor for everything, both the front end and the back end. And that's how we got to this. So that's not going to work. So I'm just going to project my voice now. So this is a sort of mock-up, print screen, whatever, of our app. And this is our metaphor, pretty much. So on a file system, we had files. In our app, those are items. So like my phone is a file. We had folders and drives on our computer. Here we call them locations. And we had kilobytes, and this one is the really most important one. And here, on our app, we have liters. And so you can see that it has some differences, sure, but it's very similar to a file system. And you can know that this is almost full. You can know its capacity. If you're used to working with drives and them always being full, then you have some experience that you can draw into this. And yeah. And for those of you that can still remember what a fragmented hard drive is, that's really useful here. Because we also have that concept, sort of. Like you have a cabinet that's all messy. Well, that's a fragmented hard drive. It's messy cabinet, fragmented hard drive, almost the same thing. And so sometimes we need to defragment our drives, so clean up our cabinets. But now the geekiest among you might be about to remark, well, hey, the international system unit of measurement for volume isn't liters, it's cubic meters. And to that I have a question. Who here can visualize how much a cubic meter is? Can we have a little show of hands? Yeah, a few. And who here can visualize how much a liter is? Yeah. 5 liters. Yeah. And I don't think you can visualize how many 2,000 liters is, but you know it's a lot. And it's not going to fit into a drawer. So that's also kind of a magic where we didn't limit ourselves to the intuition of around interfaces. Those tidbits of intuition are also valuable. Let's not use the correct unit. Let's use the unit users are used to. And if this software was in America, then it wouldn't be liters. It would be whatever those madmen use for volume. Cats? Yeah, okay, awesome. But can you put them in a box? Yeah.
I wouldn't put too many of them in the same box.
But if you put them in a box, then do you know the status of the cat?
That's a yes and a no.
Okay. And so, just like that, I hope I was able to show you guys the power of drawing upon the user's experience from the world and making interfaces that are easier to use, and most importantly, that your users are more willing to use. And so, just to wrap things up, this is my prediction for the future of interfaces. Oh, no, wait, it's this. Actually, it's a little bit of both and a little bit of neither. I think the future of interfaces is conversational interfaces. Because think of it, it's already how we interact with the world. And for however long civilization has existed, we've been having conversations, and we work based on conversations. It's intuitive to us. And it's here to stay. We at IRC, we have Discord, we're used to it, and it's here, and it's not going anywhere. But now I might say, well, wait, you surely can't do everything with just a chat, or you might even be saying, well, wait a minute, I'm a front-end developer. Are you trying to come for my job? And the answer to those questions is, you're absolutely correct. You cannot do everything with a chat, and no, I'm not trying to take your job. But we can take this chat, we can take the ChatGPT for chat interface and enhance it, bringing enhanced conversational interfaces. So this is the first step of enhancing that interface, which is realizing the users are lazy. They don't want to type, understandably. So let's inspire ourselves in how a conversational interaction works for a business process. We get to McDonald's, and the cashier says, welcome to McDonald's. What can I get you today? And you have a menu in front of you, and so you can just pick something. You can choose from a menu that you have in front of you. You don't have to waste time saying, well, I'm really craving for some codfish. Do you serve any? And you avoid getting a slightly irritated response saying, sir, this is a McDonald's. And what I'm trying to get into here is we have 4 suggestions in this example, which you can think of it as a greeting when you get into the store. And the first suggestion is, well, it's the obvious one. This is a system for managing objects, so let's ask the user, let the user say, hey, I'm looking for an object, because 90% of the time the users are going to be using your app for the purposes it was built for. I think 90% was a bit high for that, actually. And the second option is based on what the user usually requests. So we know that this user is a really thirsty user, and so we can predict with 56.78% certainty that the user will want a bottle of water. Then, the third option, it's based on the time of day. So in this case, right now it's almost dinner time, and the system can see that the user still hasn't cooked dinner. And so maybe the user wants some dinner ideas, maybe that's why the user came here. And you can see how this would be useless if it were 8 a.m. This button would be completely useless. And that's something cool about these types of interfaces, is that our interface adapts to the circumstances and brings us the most relevant information that's going to work most of the time, making interaction easier. And for those 10%, that 10% of the time that nothing that we want is here, we can just type what we want, okay? And then the last option is based on the system state. And so imagine you get into a mechanic's garage and your car is missing one of its front wheels. And the mechanic says, hello, are you here for an oil change? You start questioning the mechanic's ability to diagnose a problem. Because, well, a whole wheel is missing and this guy thinks I'm here for an oil change. Here, that serves to say that it makes sense to give suggestions based on the system state. And so since, in this case, the user is low on stock of groceries, the system is pretty much trying to say, hey, so buddy, I noticed you only have like 1 day of groceries left. Maybe it was time for a grocery run? No, yeah. And this is pretty much how these suggestions work. But they go a step further. We can also add little snippets to the interface when it makes sense. And this is going to serve 2 purposes. We're going to get a better user experience, and at the same time, we're going to let everyone in the process know that the user is the one in control, not the chat, not the AI. The user is the one that makes the decisions. So in this case, the user wanted to change the color of the tech items category to blue. And so the helpful chat was like, okay, cool. I suggest this shade of blue. Click this button to proceed. Awesome. But if you don't like that shade of blue, here are some other shades of blue. Are they the same on this screen? No. Oh, must be from the perspective. Yeah. And if you didn't like any of them, then you can pick another color. And so we're respecting the user's choices, and we're making it clear that it's up to the user. We're never going to make a decision for the user. But at the same time, accepting these suggestions that are most of the time reasonable is just a button's click away. So in this process, it's important to ensure that the user has agency. So the user always makes the final call. The AI must never make decisions for you, because you can't sue an AI. And it's clear to the user where the data is coming from, because some of you that use ChatGPT or something like that, you might sometimes think, well, where is ChatGPT getting the data from? Is he hallucinating it, as Sergio mentioned earlier, that they are known for hallucinating? Or did it get the data from somewhere reliable? So you must show in your interface that, hey, ChatGPT got these, for instance, medical records from the medical records database for this user with this ID. And so you can make sure that the user, that it matches up what you asked for. You can even show a picture of the user to make sure that the guy standing in front of you is the guy in the medical records that you just requested. And if possible, so let's not be too revolutionary, let's have a fallback to the usual interface. So let's allow users to use both, like a regular interface that people are used to, and this conversational interface. And let's say that the chat model wasn't able to get you where you wanted to be, then the chat model could say, hey, so I'm sorry I wasn't able to find the specific setting you were searching for. Click here, and I'll bring you to the settings screen, and you can search for whatever the heck you want. And that's a really valuable one, at least in a transition period where people aren't used to these kinds of interfaces. And that was pretty much it. I'd be happy to take questions now if anyone has any questions.